There are genres out there I love. RPGs, adventures, and Metroidvania being my top 3, to be honest. Put a title belonging to any of these genres in any combination, and there's a good chance I'm gonna have a good time. By the same measure, there are genres I can't play. I mean, I can, but it's not gonna be a good time for me. Stuff like The Sims or even Civilization are not my cup of tea, nor is anything that is thoroughly multiplayer. So you'll never see me doing Valorant or anything like it, and hell will freeze over before I give Dead by Daylight a shot, even considering how much of a horror fan I am. For most genres I don't play, the reason is simply they don't click with me. There are exceptions to the rule. I mean, I have eclectic tastes, and never say never. But there is a genre I didn't play because I found the experience stressful instead of enjoyable, and that is the survival crafting open world genre, where it's you out there in some wilderness or open space or in a water world, just eking out survival day by day, keeping track of resources and food and water, until you get to the point where you can have some confidence in that the moment to moment you're not just gonna starve. I hated those games. And here's the thing, I tried them. I saw how much people loved Subnautica, and I said, let's give it a shot, maybe this'll be the one to do it. It wasn't. I quit about a couple of hours in. I was not having fun with it. Then came another, Breathedge, where it's Subnautica in space, with perhaps too much humor. It's an odd thing to say, but there is such a thing as pacing when it comes to humor, and at times there can be too much of a good thing. When everything is a joke, nothing is funny, and come to think of it, I should put that on a t-shirt, because agree or not, that's one hell of a line. But I digress. Breathedge took the annoyance to another level. The space exploration aspect kept me going far longer than the underwater scenario presented in Subnautica. But it's a game designed around durability, and everything just easily breaks down, and it's a bit obtuse in terms of progression. Eventually, I simply had enough. At the core of my issues with both was the management aspect of the genre, keeping track of food, water, oxygen, power, durability, etc., which often required a lot of planning ahead, and in the way my brain is wired, contingencies, making sure I could deal with the situations as they came. During my first go at these games, it became too much, keeping track of all the different resources I needed for all the crafting requirements, plus the nutrition aspects, just started to feel like I had spreadsheets in my head. I felt like I was playing Inventory Simulation 3000 instead of anything else. But then just recently, I played the demo for Breathedge 2, and I had a lot of fun with it. There are still some annoyances, of course, trappings of the genre as it were, but a lot of quality of life improvements that removed the bulk of the issues I had with the first title. I finished the demo excited to give Breathedge 2 a shot, which is unusual given the genre it sits in. One aspect it simplified was the hunger and thirst, combining them into simply being satiated, and adding in a fatigue system, which is your other gauge, and which you can simply refill by having your character chill for a moment, sit down on a bench, or grab a little nap time. It's a measure that is easily resolved, and is very much geared towards take a breath, relax for a moment. Sure, resting for a while will lead to some hunger, but I feel that for those of us for whom the genre can be too stressful, it's something of a catch-up mechanic, or at least catch-a-breath mechanic. Though with the demo complete and realizing I didn't really know how the characters got there, in fact I didn't know who the characters were beyond the man, aka the main character, I said, you know what? Let me go back and try to push through Breathedge 1. At least to understand how we got where we are. And thinking, hey, I like the demo for Breathedge 2, maybe I can give the genre another try? Maybe it's gonna be different this time. And so I picked up where I left off, which was around chapter 2 of the story. You have a goal, and to reach it you need to find ways to offset some truly heinous radiation. I won't say it was a truly pleasant experience though. In fact, I uninstalled and reinstalled the game like 5 times. I had particularly bad sessions that stressed me out so much, I said, enough, I gave it a go, it's enough. But I do have gamer brain, where the little competitive voice in my head goes, let's give it one more go, let's give it one more. Eventually I found my groove. and managed to finish the game, discovering along the way that the last 2 chapters are pretty much an entirely different game altogether, which, given the world-hopping adventure Breath Edge 2 is gearing up to be, makes me think the end of the first game was very much like the prototype idea for the sequel. And having finished Breath Edge, I realized I can make it through an open-world survival crafting game, if I both take a break when it's overwhelming and push through when I think I'm close to, let's call it, a breakthrough. So with that in mind, I thought, let's go give the original culprit. The first of these games I try to maybe go, nah, the same for me, Subnautica. I wanted to see if my experience with Breath Edge would be the same with the other title, or if Breath Edge's unique combination of a Russian guy with an immortal chicken is what I need to finish one of these games. I'll get this out of the way, the visuals in Subnautica are breathtaking. From the good to the downright chilling. I have a newfound respect for the people who have thalassophobia, that being the fear of deep bodies of water. I experienced a little bit of a similar apprehension staring down at the edge of the world, aka the edge of the crater, and the first few times into the briny depths were followed by a very pronounced nope, 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 nope. Made worse, of course, by the fact that at any given time, you could be assaulted by a snake on steroids. It took me longer to find my groove with Subnautica, particularly because of how obtuse the game felt in terms of telling me where I should be heading next or how to advance the story. I'm a story guy. At any given time, if you tell me there's a tale, I'm gonna make that a priority. I appreciated that Breath Edge gave me mission objectives and markers of where the critical things were, leaving it up to me to get there and figure out the solution. Subnautica isn't exactly forthcoming with this stuff, and it became a rather large bump in the road for me and the way these games stress me out. But eventually, I was cruising through the oceans on my wonderful Seamoth, which I lovingly called Squirtle, and painted neon pink. As if I'm gonna have to look for the thing, it better be the loudest possible color it can be. Same with my delightful little mech, which I admit took a little while for me to enjoy, given how clumsy it felt. By the end, the prawn had kinda grown on me. And then, of course, the steroid anacondas decided I was having too much fun. So they decided it was time for them to break the laws of physics and show me just how busted and buggy Subnautica could be. The result of their efforts being a Seamoth floating 200 meters above the water, stuck there, and a prawn taken 200 meters below the freaking seafloor. But still, I persevered and eventually managed to get enough to build the last of the vehicles, the Cyclops. And I absolutely hated the thing. I like watching Jesse Cox videos, and as he would say, this thing can kiss my whole butt. But by then I had another problem. I was feeling constantly overwhelmed by the sheer number and complexity of the items I had to craft, especially as the rocket thing came into the game. I wasn't really all that invested in the plot either, and the only thing I can say or give props to regarding the Sea Emperor is that I owe her my life. She RKO'd out of nowhere a big leviathan that came for me. The issue of my stress was further compounded by the fact that most of the materials I needed were in places where a lot of dangerous things come to socialize. The worst of the bunch being the Warpers, who love to teleport me out of my vehicles and into their loving embrace. I was making plans within plans and contingencies on how I would acquire all the stuff I needed, and this also sometimes included how I would acquire the missing recipes for stuff I could see I could build, but had no means of actually doing so. The whole fragment scanning thing of Subnautica is responsible for a good 40% of my frustration and stress. Too many times I felt like, yeah, this is it, I can now finally build the nuclear reactor. Oh, what do you mean this is 1/3 of the blueprint? It got so bad that after every play session I was still running numbers of materials in my head. I was still thinking, oh, do I need to go into the Lost River, get the materials that only pop over there? Same with the lava place. Oh, I have to take the Cyclops there too. My dear Seamoth can't handle the depths. Oh well, time to create a bunch of spare power cells so the Cyclops has enough energy to get out of the driveway. In essence, it became difficult to disconnect fully from the game between sessions. I was running Excel spreadsheets in my mind. But eventually the story was finished, and I was smiling ear to ear with the knowledge that I was one push of a button away from leaving this godforsaken watery grave behind. I'll give this to Subnautica. After all the horrors and stress its flora and fauna and crafting and systems and insatiable hunger put me through, it gave me a great big send-off with a giant pink vibrator rocket. So am I now a fan of the genre? No! Hell no! After I started writing this, I played Below Zero, the standalone expansion for Subnautica, and the overall experience, even up to the end, was very much the same. I was having trouble dealing with the stress and the multitude of systems, especially as Below Zero remixes a lot of the stuff, and familiar recipes and patterns that I had become accustomed to suddenly felt wrong. Like I need to build a basic tool, but it demands diamonds, which in the core Subnautica is one of the materials for a later section in the game. And while I could play the game in free mode where hunger and thirst are not a factor, again, I have gamer brain that prevents me from playing the game in any other way except the way it was meant to be played, as the developers wanted the experience to be. So while I was intrigued by the story and actually liked the more narrative approach, I was having trouble playing, combined by both the fragment scanning stuff and just how little the game gives you to go on in terms of what priorities are or where you should be going to. More than in the base Subnautica, I was wishing for a map that at least showed my position among the many different biomes. You're now in the middle of nowhere. To your west is a purple pustule gas chamber, to your left is a creepy lily abyss. You know, something to help mitigate how lost and overwhelmed I felt at times with the exploration, which has a lot more diving through crevices and tight corners than the base Subnautica. But while I just didn't fall in love with the genre, it became clear to me that I was no longer as closed off as I once was in trying a particular style of game and maybe giving them a fair shake. But it is going to be a case-by-case basis. I'm not going to see a survival crafting game on Steam and just jump and say, yeah, 100%! Like I would do with, say, a Metroidvania or a point-and-click adventure. But facing these games and my feelings about it has been a meaningful experience. My takeaway from it all is a lesson that I thought I had learned a couple of years ago. In 2023, after being bombarded by Steam with countless titles of, let's call it, the adult variety, I finally said, okay, let me give one of these IKEA mannequin intimacy simulators a go. So I looked at the one with the highest rating, which on Steam is overwhelmingly positive. Regardless of the genre, overwhelmingly positive is not an easy rating to get, so it was worth a shot. And while the plastic people bumping ugly didn't do it for me, I found great characters and an interesting and compelling human drama. Not perfect, not the greatest story ever told, but far more than I would have thought possible for that genre, which quite honestly can often be just mindless smut. And so the lesson was to never dismiss an entire genre of games. There are always gems to be found if you give them a fair chance. Now I'm going to play Breathedge 2, and likely will play Subnautica 2 as well. The latter with a larger degree of trepidation than the former, to be honest. As for the other games in the genre, that case-by-case basis primarily boils down to I would need to hear stellar recommendations from people, because it's still not a genre I would dive into head first, just see how it goes. I knew Subnautica was well beloved, which is why I decided to go back to it. Even if it didn't work for me originally, it was still a game built competently enough that it had a significant fanbase. Hell, I know from hearing him say it in one of his videos that Jacksepticeye loves Subnautica. That helped my decision of going back to it after being done with Breathedge. Another possible lesson from this frankly fascinating experience is that I would not recommend anyone play 3 games of an unfamiliar and previously undesired genre back-to-back without some palate cleansers. After Breathedge, Subnautica, and Subnautica Below Zero in a row, I need a break from the genre, to detox from the whole experience. I do have an eye on Planet Crafter, which meets the criteria I mentioned above, having stellar reviews. But I need a little separation to see if the heart grows fonder, or at least tolerable. But that now also opens me to consider other titles I would have dismissed in the past, perhaps chief among them Civilization. Please let me know in the comments which Civ might be the best for me to jump into. I've heard some mixed things about Civ 7, so maybe it's not the right choice for me. So any recommendations will be welcome, and if there's a game you enjoyed that made you appreciate a genre in a way you didn't before, please let me know in the comments as well. Maybe we'll have that in common, or even a new genre for me to explore. After all, this experience truly taught me there is some worth in diving headfirst and plunder unknown depths.